Okay. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some required reading. Kind of. I feel super bright today in this thing. So today I thought we would talk about some of the books that I would consider required reading for people because of a bunch of different reasons, honestly. But these are books that I love so much and I like them for specific reasons, and I think that honestly everyone would get something out of it, and I think everyone should read these books. There are so many books out there that I feel like should be on this list, but I haven't read them yet, and I only want to talk about the books that I physically have read. So this list is not finalized. It is just a kind of a part one to maybe a future video. We'll see. But these are just 10 books that I have read that honestly I think people should read. I will leave a link or leave a list down in the description below of all of these books if you want to check them out on Goodreads. But I feel like that's all I need to say. So let's go in and talk about these 10 books. There's absolutely no order to these books. They just are in the order that I thought of them. That's really about it. So let's eat my own hair. Let's get going. The very first two I'm going to kind of do together because they're by the same author. And that is If I Was Your Girl and Birthday by Meredith Russo. These are both books that tackle transgender identity in some way. These two tackle such different things, but I think they're so important because they give such different perspectives to being transgender. I also think that these are so important because the author is a transgender woman herself, and so like I feel like they come from very real places. If I Was Your Girl tackles some interesting things, but it's a little bit more lighthearted, if you will, more of a romance, whereas Birthday tackles kind of the trauma of puberty when you feel like you're in the wrong body. So I think people should read both of these just for the transgender rep themselves, because this was the first book that I ever read with a transgender main character, and it opened my eyes and I devoured it, and I really think that people should read these because they are so important for totally different reasons. And also this author's amazing and I will read anything she writes, but I think these two had to be on this list somewhere. The next one that I want to talk about is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I honestly didn't know really much of anything about this book, except for that everyone seemed to love it until my roommate picked my TBR for me, and this was in it because this was one of her favorite books, and I absolutely devoured it. I loved this book, but I think the big thing that I liked about this book, it had a lot of anxiety rep in here, but it does it in such a way that the reader really feels like they are having the anxiety and the anxiety attacks that our main character is having. And someone who has never really experienced that, I can't say if this is good rep or bad rep, obviously, but I feel like this gives you at least a little bit of insight into the fact that, holy crap, this is what people go through, and you actually really feel what people go through. So maybe it may not be accurate for everybody, but it's at least a good stepping stone to really understand what having anxiety is like. Next one is one that I quite literally just finished, so spoiler for an upcoming wrap-up, but that is A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow. This one is on this list because it gives the reader an understanding of I guess the Black experience, being a Black person, going to protests. And while this is more set in a fantasy world, it is a huge metaphor for the Black Lives Matter movement and protesting and everything that comes along with that. And it just gives you a completely new understanding if you've never been to a protest or if you've never been in that situation. It gives you a totally different perspective on the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think it's incredibly important. And while this book is amazing for a lot of different reasons, that's the biggest reason it's on this list. The next one I think is incredibly important for its rep, specifically because it is made for younger audiences, and that is Lily and Duncan by Donna Gephart. This follows a couple of kids, one that suffers from severe mental illness and one that suffers from the fact that they are afraid to go through puberty because they feel like they were born in the wrong body. Lily was born Timothy, and the struggle of, you know, trying to transition before puberty hits, because puberty is terrifying. But this is, I think, very important and on this list because it's such a incredible representation of two very important and very hard topics, but it does it for young kids because this is a middle grade book. It is higher middle grade, but it is middle grade, so it is meant for younger readers. And though I think everyone should read this, this one is specifically on this list because I think it's a beautiful way to breach the subject to younger readers and also have them understand the importance and just understand that these things are part of the world. I just think it's incredibly important to have books like this that show younger readers representation, whether that is race representation or mental health representation, like whatever representation it is. I think it's incredibly important to have those in younger books, and I think this one does it very well. The next one that I have on this list is blanking words. The next one I have on this list is Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. For me, this is on this list because it's a very, very good first step to understanding sexual assault and rape, and having a book by someone who is maybe not directly impacted as if they are the victim, but is impacted because they're directly involved in the situation. And it's also very accessible for people who maybe want to read more about this topic and want to see topics like this discussed in books, but having very lengthy descriptions on the page is very triggering. And I think this definitely has its moments, so trigger warnings obviously, but I think it tackles it in a way that's very accessible for a lot of people. I also think it's very great representation and very much normalizes that representation because there is lots of representation within this book. But it's so incredibly important. It's so incredibly, like, hard-hitting, but like I said, in a way that's very accessible for a large group of people. And for such a hard topic, I think that's very important to have at least a handful of books that are accessible for a lot of people. So that's why this one is on this list. Also, it's just amazing. The next one is one that I think is important for everyone to read, but I think it'll hit US readers a little bit harder. And that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. Ooh, that glare was interesting. And I say for US readers because so obviously Michelle Obama was the first lady of the US. So it's not all about her life during her husband's presidency while she was living in the White House, but that is a huge chunk of it. And I like this book, and I think it's so important because it also tackles a lot of things within this, but it also talks about her life before the White House, but it talks about her life in the White House. And I feel like when we see stories about the White House, it's either from the president's perspective or from his staff's perspective, where they're like very in the know and they're like involved in all of the day-to-day things. Well, she was not. She had her own stuff to like think about. And this is just, it just gives the family, the White House, the first family, that's the word I'm looking for. It just gives the first family a more human look because they are human, and she's worrying about her kids and how they're going to be in the limelight and what that means for her and her family. But also as the wife of Barack, she wants to be there to support him. And I think this is very interesting, and it gives a look at the first family in a totally different light. Also, Michelle Obama is just an amazing human being, and like we stan her. So I think that everyone can get something out of this, but I think if you've lived in the US or you know a lot about US politics, it's going to hit a little bit more because while this is not a political heavy book, it is more focused on her life. Politics obviously play a part because she was such a big figure in politics for 8 years, and still is a huge face in US politics. But I really just liked seeing her side of the story, and she's amazing, and like, we need more books like this. The next one is one that I've also read recently, so like, again, spoiler for my August wrap up, but that is When the World Didn't End, Poems by Caroline Kaufman. I think this one is very similar in the same veins as like Eliza and Her Monsters because she tackles a lot of mental health within this book, and it's all so real and so raw and so human, and like every single person who reads this book will get something out of it, whether it's a better understanding of mental health if you may not suffer from any, or a fellow person who suffers from maybe something that you suffer with, and so you can recognize yourself within these pages. I think it's important for everybody to read for those two reasons. And she's just so raw and open about stuff, and I love it. So that's why it's here. I think everyone should read this because I think it's a very accessible, that's my word of the video today, accessible poetry book, especially for people who may not read tons of poetry, but it's very easy to read and very easy to understand, and it'll hit everyone hard, but in different ways. And that is important. And the very last one, honestly, like, I have no specific reason why this is on this list, but I do think it's important for everybody for different reasons. But that is Wonder by RJ Palacio. This is a middle grade book that I'm sure tons of people have read by now and know about because there was a movie that came out a few years ago based on this book. But this book is about a kid who has a face deformity and goes to public school for the first time because he has been homeschooled his entire life. And he goes to middle school, which y'all know, middle school is rough, and it's about the bullying that he takes, like the bullying that gets thrown his way, and just kind of dealing with lots of stuff. But it's all about kindness. That is the biggest thing this author promotes, is how kind people should be to one another. And the conversations and the community that has stemmed from this book is incredible. And it's just like, it's hard because it's not fun to see a kid get bullied, but at the same time, all of these amazing things come out of it, and you see so much kindness in this book, and you see the world kind of like addressing this book and realizing how impactful this book really is. And it's amazing. I think everyone should read it. Like, I can't pinpoint a reason why I think this should be required reading, but like, once you read this, you will understand what I am talking about. So, required. Please read it. Well, those are just a handful. I think I did 10 books that I would consider required reading for one reason or another. Let me know down below if you agree with my thoughts on this, if you've read any of the books that I have mentioned, or if there's a book out there or a handful of books that you would consider required reading for one reason or another. Let's talk. I would like to know what those are and why you think that. But I appreciate you for watching this video. I hope that you very much enjoyed it. Let's chat down below. But if you did like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I have all my social media down there as well if you want to follow along on any of those. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!